much for being with us here today to share your experience. We really appreciate your time. We're going
Course.
to start by just asking you a couple of questions about your own background. So, first off, tell me what inspired you to become an advocate for mental health and wellness as a first responder.
Well, thank you for having me. This is something that I believe in passionately, and I definitely believe in the work that you guys are doing. As far as for my inspiration, it was a full 360, coming from military background, and even a Hispanic culture background. Anything to do with mental health is not looked upon positively. It's something that even transitioned over to the first responder when I became a first responder, and it's the whole, suck it up, buttercup. You know what you signed up for. This is what we do. Men don't cry, and all that really changed for me when I had my first duty station, and I saw one of my captains who is a fierce leader, who's confident, competent people, somebody who people look up to, and I saw the effects that certain hardships had on him that really started to open up my eyes to what is mental health. And then that's when I started developing my passion to want to help first responders. I love being a first responder, but I love helping first responders now more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there are pros and cons to the career field that you've chosen. Tell us, let's start right with the hardships. What are the things that are hardest about choosing that career field?
So in this career field and even military or whatnot, it's because a lot of first responders are paramilitary,
Mhm.
and they come from different backgrounds, as you know. So the physical aspect of things is not necessarily a difficulty. It's more than anything the mental. It's just like I tell a lot of people, we can teach somebody how to pull a hose, how to fight a fire, how to shoot a target, and defensive tactics and drive, professionally. But what we really can't teach is how you're going to deal with death or a suicide of somebody who you may know or somebody who is close to the age of a family member. And that's something that we don't necessarily harp on yet.
Yeah, and it does seem to have that relevancy to your own life, does seem to have a greater impact, doesn't it?
Yes, 100%.
So, what about the opposite side? Let's talk about the things you love about this career field, about being a firefighter.
Oh man, there's there's a lot. So more than anything is what throughout the years that I've been a first responder is the ability to walk through a stranger's door and sometimes make a positive impact. We go with the right intentions of wanting to help. Obviously, that's why we signed up for this job, is because we want to be part of a bigger mission, a bigger picture. And when we walk through those doors, people aren't expecting, they're not inviting us over for dinner or inviting us over for a good chat, right? They're calling us because they're possibly having the worst day of their lives. So being able to make an impact in a complete stranger's life is something that is sacred. Another aspect that I love is the brotherhood and the culture that we have as a first responder. We go to these emergencies. We don't go through them alone. Uh, Whether it's bad car accidents, cardiac arrest, whatever it is, we experience these things together as one. And that that right there is just it's a good backup to have, to know that you are not alone in the process.
Yeah, that's great. How about the difference between the branches of first responders, right? What's different do you feel for firefighters versus law enforcement or EMS, if any at all?
I would say being able to have stepped in all three of these fields as a SWAT medic, obviously with firefighting, being an EMT paramedic, aside from the daily duties of that are the main differences from the daily duties. I would say it all comes down to, there's not much difference, because at the end of the day, we all kind of unite when it comes to the mental aspect of things, right? Because it's that culture, that brotherhood, that tribe, that, and this is in all of it, that if you see somebody, a brother or sister who is needing help, whether it's mentally or physically, you automatically want to do something for them, whether it's somebody that you appreciate or somebody you just really cannot stand. At the end of the day, if I see that person, I'm going to help them no matter what. It's like a sibling that you just fight with all the time, but at the end of the day, they're still your sibling.
Right. So it sounds like that kind of family mentality, that brotherhood, that sisterhood kind of stands above all else, despite maybe the difference in operational duty from day to day.
Right.
What do you think the perspective is overall in terms of mental health from your peers in that career field?
I would say the perspective has improved. As I said earlier, it's the perspective when I first got on the job, even from military, even just from the fire department, it was a negative perspective, as in, no, you only, because there's certain differences. You have you have a fear of, am I going to be accepted? Am I going to be looked at as incompetent? Am I going to get in trouble? So the perspective was a negative one, that I experienced at first, and which is why I couldn't understand certain things, what depression was, what certain side effects were. Uh, but over the recent years, I've noticed that it's kind of transitioned into a more positive one, where now it's the suicides, the numbers are talking, right? And it's more people in administration, they're becoming more receptive to mental health. Then, along with my peers, more than anything, what I found effective is vulnerability. One thing I'm definitely passionate about is showing strength and vulnerability, because by showing vulnerability, you kind of overcome that fear of not being accepted. So as far as for my peers, I've been approached, I think over the last month, more than probably 4 times about, hey, who's the therapist that you're seeing? Okay, where can I go? And it's being able to, we're talking about it more freely on an open surface instead of kind of privately.
Okay. And are there particular barriers that you've noticed to reaching out and getting counseling services?
I would say yes, with certain facilities, and even programs within certain departments. A lot of departments, they already have a program in place, and those programs don't necessarily have culturally competent professionals. Just to give you an example from my own personal experience, the first person I spoke to, that I reached out to privately when I first started getting into or learning about therapy, they were not culturally competent. And their best advice to me, while I was working in an extremely busy firehouse, not getting any sleep whatsoever, running anywhere from 18 to 24 calls a shift, was, we'll try to get some sleep. Or when we started to talk about calls, they would just sit in awe of these calls. So I would say the the lack of cultural competency, meaning in the fact that having professionals that know how we live before shift, during shift, and after shift,
Mhm.
is a huge gap.
Okay. And so, do you think that having some familiarity, getting some background, and just having a sense of an idea of what to expect from your first responder clients might be helpful in serving them in a better capacity?
Yes, that I agree with 100%. Having the knowledge of what habits or rituals does that first responder have, what plans does that first responder have, are in action, or protocols, I guess you could call it, which may not be any, to where, from the moment that you wake up, you're automatically stressed out, whether it's through finances, relationships, or even health reasons, and not necessarily, and them not necessarily understanding that, it starts to snowball, and then you come on shift without any sort of a habit or without anything, and then you try to find that first therapist, and then when that first therapist fails, you immediately lose everything, and you become immediately discouraged to even search for another one. Um, so
Okay, you mentioned family,
mm,
and one of the things we really want to acknowledge is the partner experience,
mm.
right? Being married to or with a first responder. How can you share what impact it might have on your family by being a firefighter?
So one strong piece of advice that I received from one of my mentors. He said, "Your family doesn't want your leftovers," and that hit really hard for me because as a first responder, sometimes you tend to give the department or to give your agency pretty much put your priority list, prioritize them first, and with that you you tend to kind of deprioritize your family. So when you come home and you have a wife or a son or whatnot that they want to spend time with you, they want to know about your day, and necessarily you might not be in the right headspace to where you want to talk or you want to do anything. So more than anything is the importance of the family, one, understanding what just happened. Like with my wife, I used to call her right after shift, and I would be in a completely wrong headspace, and we would be arguing before I even got home. So it wasn't until I went to a conference, and they basically said you have to, have a post shift ritual, whether you just listen to piano music or you just don't listen to anything at all, and you just kind of get in the right headspace. And even some affirmations to where it's like, okay, I'm a good dad, I'm a good husband, whatever it is. And by the time you get to that door, we as first responders, firefighters, we size up the door in certain things. So I started doing my size up of the door and just kind of saying those affirmations, and that has helped me tremendously. Just kind of shift mindsets and take off that mask of, oh, I'm a whatever position I am, and whatever it is that's, at home I am dad and husband.
You bring up a great point. We talk a little bit in our training about moving from protector to partner.
Mhm.
And in that transition, what that might be like for the first responder. Maybe you can speak a little bit to that transition piece, or the effect of that in your own role.
Of course. So for me, the that transition takes place when, one, I have to actively, obviously, be aware of it, right? I have to um, perform an action, which is basically, okay, I am I'm leaving work at work. We talk about like, oh, leave work at work. Like, no, this is literally leave work at work. You take off that mask of with you're a leader or firefighter, whatever it is, whatever ego, and you you really almost put on another mask, almost to where it's like, okay, or how can I be the best dad? How can I be the best husband? Because at the end of the day, the one thing we can't multiply is time. And if I come home and I let work, I don't release whatever anger or whatever emotion I have before I get home, then it's obviously going to get discharged onto my family, and they don't deserve that. So for me, it's being able to release that before I get home, whether it's going on a walk or a run or a quick workout. I'm able to give my family the person they deserve.
I love that. That's a great comment. Lastly, if there is one piece of advice or guidance that you'd offer professionals working with first responders, what might it be?
I would say really break down the habits of the first responder to fully understand them. And the fact, for example, what is the first thing you think of when you wake up, or what is the first thing you do when you wake up? Do you grab your phone and immediately check your bank statement because you're worried about the mortgage, or do you immediately check your text messages to see if certain someone has texted you? What do you do before shift to get you in the right mindset? For me, and I know for a few others that I've spoken to, the majority of us are very, I guess, protocol driven, right? I mean, we work under a protocol and certain guidelines. So I know for me is I function off systems. So whether it's, okay, what is my pre-shift ritual, right? Or I guess you call it protocol, which is I work out, I meditate, and I get in the right headspace to where I can perform. And then what during shift? What about when you get stressed out during shift? Kind of maybe just really go down almost hour by hour to see what the habits are, and if there aren't any habits, what habits or protocols can we instill that might work for you? For example, even post shift, what do you do before you get home, instead of just going straight home and unleashing whatever you have inside of you, right? Is, I would say, really kind of just breaking it down and creating those habits and protocols would be extremely beneficial.
Great. Thank you so much. I mean, I think it's so helpful to hear about the healthy habits you have to put into place, right? To create resilience before, during, and after shift. All of those are so vital to creating that foundational support and preventing or healing from whatever trauma exposure it is that individual goes through. So thanks for sharing that.
Of course, yeah, no worries.
All right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate all the information you've shared with us and your perspective. We appreciate you being with us.
No problem, Doc. Thank you. I appreciate you guys.